Welcome back. In November, Utah voters will decide on whether the state will fully expand Medicaid as originally intended under the Affordable Care Act. Riley Curtis is with the Utah Decides Healthcare Initiative. Riley, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me back.
You bet. Let's talk about the initiative, what it does. Fully expanding Medicaid, what does that mean here in Utah?
Yeah, so the Utah Decides Healthcare Ballot Initiative was just recently named Proposition 3, so we're super excited to have that name. What the initiative does is it will expand Medicaid to 150,000 Utahns, and it will bring back over $800 million in federal funds to the state. These are funds we've been paying for over 5 years and not getting all of that money back. And that money will actually have a positive economic impact in the state of Utah, creating thousands of jobs.
Now, for years, we've had this coverage gap that was created when the Supreme Court ruled that, states aren't forced under the Affordable Care Act to do this. So this will cover people who not only don't qualify for Medicaid, but they also can't go get insurance on the exchange either.
That's right. These are individuals who make too much money for Medicaid in the state, and they also don't make enough money to qualify for help on the exchange, as you mentioned. So this is Utahns who are earning typically less than $17,000 a year annually.
Okay. So it will also, though, include those at 100 to 138% of poverty. Those right now can qualify under the exchange. So why do you see it as an important move to get them into Medicaid, and how can that benefit them?
Yeah, so under the Affordable Care Act, you have to expand Medicaid up to a certain threshold. And what we're making sure is that in order to get all of those federal funds back to the state, we have to go to that threshold, and that's exactly what the bill does. So it's essentially guaranteeing that, yes, everybody will get coverage, and yes, we will bring those tax dollars back to the state of Utah. Okay,
when you talk about those tax dollars, that's the federal match, but it's also going to cost money to get this done. So how does the initiative propose to pay for the state end of it?
So Utah voters will be posed with the question whether they want to increase the state sales tax on non-food items by 0.15%. That's equivalent to about 1 cent on a movie ticket. I know I just went and saw Jurassic Park this last weekend, and it wasn't, thinking about that 1 cent cost, it's worth it to me to make sure that 150,000 of my friends and neighbors have access to health care coverage.
Let's talk about why you went the initiative route. It's been a pretty long battle over the years, so why did you finally say, you know what, we're done dealing with the legislature, we're going to take this straight to the voters?
Oh, it has been a long time coming. 5 years we've been working on this issue. We've had, consumers coming up to the Capitol, testifying, sharing their stories about how they're real Utahns who fall into this coverage gap, that they have real critical needs. And, it's just been 5 years of not solving the problem. And so we've taken this directly to Utah voters, and we're excited to earn their vote to vote yes on Proposition 3 in November.
But this year, the legislature did take a step that could potentially solve the problem, at least for those that fall into the coverage gap. Why not go that route instead of full Medicaid expansion?
So the ballot initiative is the only way to guarantee that these 150,000 Utahns get access to health care coverage and to guarantee that our tax dollars come back to the state. What was passed was a gamble, essentially. We're asking for approval by the federal government, and we've had 2 or 3 states that have been denied for what we've been requesting as a legislature. So this is really about, do we want to bring our tax dollars home? Do we want to guarantee coverage? And we're putting that question in the hands of Utah voters.
Lawmakers, especially the sponsor of the bill, the governor, seem pretty optimistic that they can get approval. If this were to get approval maybe 30 days before the election, do you think that could have an adverse impact on your ballot initiative?
I mean, that's a what-if question, right? Crystal ball. I think this is really making sure that we are putting this in the hands of Utah voters, that we have control of what we want our healthcare system to look like in the state of Utah. And I think that's the more guaranteed question than the crystal ball question. And
you seem to be somewhat pessimistic that it'll even get approval from the government.
That's right. Just earlier this week, in fact, Massachusetts, they got denied, that 100, what you're essentially asking and what Utah is asking for. They were denied earlier this week. It's another state and about 2 or 3 that were denied. And so this is really about what can be done.
What are you seeing from recent polls? I know Utah Policy recent ran one that show about 2/3 of Utahns would support this initiative.
Yeah, so it's 5 years of polling backs that up. I mean, we've had really great approval ratings by Utah voters for 5 years as we've been discussing this. Utah voters are very confident across all political spectrums, across genders, across religions, that this is the right thing to do to take care of our friends and neighbors.
One thing real quick, we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you about this. There has been a clear lack of opposition to this so far. Are you surprised by that?
I'm really not, because it's asked and answered. We've had the public discourse and the dialogue and the fights, if you will, in the past with different opposition groups. And Utah voters still stood with us in support of this initiative after that public dialogue took place.
All right, Riley, it's great to have you with us. Still early in the process, so we'll probably invite you back on as we get a little bit closer. Appreciate your time. All right. Still to come, the primary election now in the books. Our panel will break down the results and look ahead to November. That's right after the break. Stay with us.